Well, hello there. This is Andrew Williams Jr. and another conversation with Andrew Williams Jr. And as you can see, it's a bit dark, but we're here in Concord, Massachusetts. And this is not just a very special day. This is also Concordian Conversations. Our guest today is Mr. Stuart Weeks, who is the founder of the Center for American Studies at Concord. And here we are, live and, yes, in living color. Thank you so much for joining us. We are actually at the location of the center of the center of the center, or at least what some call it that, of not just Concord, but also Stuart will tell you about what else we're the center of, as he's the founder of the Center for American Studies at Concord.
So good evening. We are in Monument Square in Concord Center. And Monument Square is noted as the center of Concord, as well in not everyone, but many people's eyes, the center of Massachusetts and of our nation. Our nation in turn, for better and for worse, they go together, is a center globally, though the slope is a slippery one. So we are at a remarkable location. And earlier this afternoon, we spoke about the fact that in Monument Square, in the center of the center of the center, are three monuments devoted to men and to war. Off in the delicate shadows of Monument Square, three other monuments devoted to the woman, to a patriarchal people, and to peace. So you have this juxtaposition, and you have an expression in English. In German, the term that is Zwiegespräch, which means a conversation among two. In English, I translate it as a heart to heart. And we talked earlier today about the challenge of the masculine and the feminine elements, men and women, to really meet heart to heart. We talked about how in an age in which the agenda is to divide and conquer, that we have to be really on our toes because we are defeated, men and women, when we forget, which is all too easy, that we're on the same side. That if one wants to destroy a nation, you destroy the family, and at the head of the family are the parents. So this is a rather existential issue. And it brings us to the question of love. And so we are here, as I said, in Monument Square. And with respect to the question of love, I want to begin by focusing on the three monuments devoted to the woman, to a matriarchal people, and to peace. The monument devoted to the woman is the Pietà statue, which those who were on the call earlier saw Mother Mary holding her crucified son in her lap. That statue is here in Concord Center. It is made of the same marble as the original Pietà, the only one they know, and nobody knows how it arrived in Concord. So that is the nearly invisible statue devoted to the woman. We also noted the marker of the jail that Thoreau went to for refusing to pay taxes to support the war against Mexico and slavery. The markers of the jail that Thoreau spent a night in, which led to his essay, Civil Disobedience. Knee-hide or grasshopper, it's nearly invisible, you could trip over it. And then we talked about the marker, the monument, so to speak, invisible. That's a mere sign on the sidewalk as you round the bend from Main Street towards Monument Square that many people simply walk by, don't even notice, which is to a matriarchal people. And I'd like to focus on that in terms of the theme tonight, which is the new commandment. And the original peoples of Concord came to be known as the praying Indians. And I'd like to speak to that in light of Christianity and what it is. Emerson said, in an altered age, we worship the dead forms of our forefathers. The world holds on to a formal Christianity, and nobody dares to talk about the heart of Christianity for fear of shocking. He's suggesting that there's a Christianity that perhaps many Christians aren't aware of. Thoreau went on to say, I've met few Christians who have a genius for Christianity. That has to do with the mystery of love. And as some may know, there are actually 4 words in ancient Greek for love. There is the purely physical love, eros. There is the filial love, which is phileo. There is the soul love, which is referred to as storge. And then there's the love of the spirit in the other, agape, the love of the best or highest sense self of the other. So that is the focus for tonight with respect to the new commandment. And the final observation I'd like to make is that we're just planting a seed tonight, is that I think one way one can think of Christianity with respect to the other world religions is as a garden. And in this garden are not many plants, one being Christianity, another being Judaism, another being Islam, another being Buddhism or Hinduism, separate, distinct plants. But I see one plant. And that plant has roots, as all plants do, and a stem, and leaves, and blossoms, and fruit. And I would say that all of religions, the religions of the world, have contributed chronologically to the unfolding of this plant. The oldest religions would be the roots. The next oldest religions, the stems, the branches, the leaves, etc. The fruit, I would say, is what's referred to as a new commandment, which is to love one another. To love one another. That is a new commandment in what is known as Christianity, but we spoke about this being a Christianity that maybe many Christians aren't aware of themselves. And that's not meant in any negative way, any demeaning way whatsoever. It's offered as a fact. I say often to my Christian friends when they get into dogma and into disputes about facts that tend to divide us, and there are many, many, many Christian sects. Let us just focus on the new commandment. Let's keep it simple, just to love one another. So that's how I see the religions of the world, as they're all part of this one plant that comes to fruition in this vision of love. The vision of agape, that is a love of the true self of the other. And I'll conclude with this reflection. In front of me is Concord's first parish church, which was the first parish church, inland church in America. Concord being the first non-native inland community. And a few years ago, the head of Harvard's Humanist Society came to speak in the first parish church. He inclined towards atheism. He gave a remarkably spirited talk. And afterwards, I went up to him quite sincerely, but with a twinkle in my eye, and I thanked him. And I said that was one of the most spirited presentations I've heard, and he was a bit dumbfounded. After all, he was a humanist, maybe even an atheist. What's this about it being a spirited presentation? And he said, what do you mean? Because I think he sensed my goodwill. And I was moved to share with him an account I had with a dear friend, an exchange here in Concord. She said to me, Stuart, I'm an atheist. We were having dinner. And I paused and I reflected and I found myself saying, no, you are a theist. So I simply separated the letters. Not an atheist, which means against God, but a theist, which means for God. She was a bit startled. She reflected and she found herself saying, how did you know? That is, that I'm not an atheist, but a theist. And since I was acting more on an intuition, I had to reflect further. And I found myself responding by saying, because you began by saying, I am. I am. That speaks, I would say, to this highest form of love, which is of the true self or the I am of the other, agape, a truly christened love that is a fruit of all that is finest and fullest and truest in all the world's religions. So I think this evening is going to be a shorter session. I'm going to pass this talking stick back to my brother, Andrew, and invite him to see if there are others who are here and many have comments, and to conclude our evening gathering here in Monument Square.
Well, thank you, Stuart Sinclair Weeks. However, I would ask if you could bring up the Concord Covenant, because that is, in fact, what's on tonight's agenda. And I believe it's very relevant since we're here at the very place, as I understand it, where this seminal work was done. I really believe it's very crucially important that if you are able to bring it up, Stuart, could you please share it?
So Andrew, on tonight's agenda, we're not addressing the Concord Covenant.
That's tomorrow.
Tomorrow night we are.
Apologize, Stuart.
But thank you, thank you for hopefully whetting the appetites. I will certainly bring it up tomorrow night.
Excellent.
On Sunday evening, and we hope to have representatives of all the different faith groups in Concord. So that's where we'll be turning our attention to now. So I give it back to Andrew to conclude this short evening offering.
Well, thank you for joining us. And video. Oh, here we go. Thank you once again for joining us. This is Andrew Williams Jr., Conversation with Andrew Williams Jr. and Concordian Conversations with Stuart Sinclair Weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can know how to reach us. We'll be broadcasting live over the next 48 hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. However, you need to register to actually see the agenda. And with that, we're going to bid you adieu. Have a wonderful evening and a great good night. Thank you all.